Hey everybody, welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today we'll be watching Improbable Tales of Survival by Sam O'Nella. This certainly sounds like an interesting one. Now before we get into it, I'd appreciate it if you guys would leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my Patreon, which is linked down below, and it'll give you access to exclusive videos. Now with all that out of the way, let's jump right into this reaction.
Thanks to Dashlane for sponsoring this video.
Alright, here we go.
Hey kids, the human spirit is a very powerful thing. With the right temperament, it can allow us to survive things you wouldn't believe. However, some people are stronger than others. For example, I've never so much as broken a bone in my life. Haven't been hospitalized since that first time 20 years ago. So I'm like 90% certain if I'm ever forced to dance with death, my soul's pussying out to the great beyond first thing.
Yeah, you can find sort of a spectrum among people, right? You'll be surprised that humans are very fragile at times, but other times humans can be incredibly durable, right? Really depends on whatever story you're talking about. You know, you can be surprised in either direction. Humans can go down very easily. We are kind of fragile creatures overall, but sometimes you'll be amazed at how long somebody can last under particularly dangerous conditions or how much damage they can survive to their body. And of course, that's what we're going to be seeing, I assume, in this one.
On the other end of the spectrum, you got guys like Phineas Gage.
Ah.
Gage was a 25-year-old railroad worker in mid-19th century Vermont. He and his crew were busy gang blasting
This is I think, a relatively famous story that probably a lot of you have heard. I've certainly heard this one before.
rock to prepare the road bed for a newly planned route. This involves a big hole being drilled into the ground, filled with gunpowder, and packed down using a tamping iron. Well, being the gentleman and scholar that he is, Gage decides to lean forward and look directly into the hole, right? Now, the first rule of gun safety is to never look down the front of a gun. Everyone knows that. Gage basically just turned the earth into a gun and decided to put his head right in front of its gaping barrel.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, the powder goes off. The tamping iron shoots up into his cheek, moseys right on through his frickin' brain, and goes soaring out the other side, landing 80 feet away.
Yeah, it goes all the way through. Imagine the force through which it had to slam through his jaw, his skull, out the other side, and land that far away. This is, an incredibly quick-moving object. He gets hit incredibly hard from this explosion. There's no OSHA looking out for Phineas Gage here. There's no, there's no workplace safety that they have to comply to, but, there wouldn't be any compliance anyway, right? So this has been slammed through his brain. You'd think he'd be dead right there on the spot. Well, not old Phineas Gage.
All smeared with blood and thought juice. Now, by and large, Gage should have dropped dead immediately and been thrown into a ravine for his blatant disregard for OSHA regulations, and that would have been the end of it. But I guess Shiva Gautama Christ-chan, the one true god, decided Gage still had unfinished business down here on Shit Outta Luck 3, because after a few minutes of twitching on the ground, he got up, looked around, and thought, well, now's a good time as any for my yearly checkup. According to the doctor he went to, while Gage was retelling the story of what happened, he suddenly started vomiting all over the place, the effort of which, and I quote, pushed out about half a teacup full of the brain, which fell upon the floor. He didn't say what they did with it after. I'm picturing his dog just running over and immediately scarfing it down, then being plagued with the memories of a human railroad worker for the rest of his life.
I mean, and this is the thing. Not only does Phineas Gage survive, but he survives in a sort of okay condition. I know that sounds strange to say after what we just saw, but you would expect, even if he was to live, well, he shouldn't be able to operate. But we actually have a couple stories throughout history. There are examples of people who get chunks taken out of their brain, sometimes medically, right? Sometimes this is a medical procedure, but people who, either on purpose or by accident, get chunks taken out of their brain, or have their brain exposed to the elements, and they manage to survive, and, sometimes they lose functionality, but I guess depending on what part of the brain is lost, sometimes they continue to function relatively normally, which is pretty insane.
In the months following, Gage made a near complete recovery, physically anyway. He did lose a bit of his mind, which caused him to lose his mind a bit. Whereas Gage was once an upstanding, hardworking citizen, his untimely brain blast transformed him into an angry, incoherent drunkard, mumbling, quote, the grossest profanity whenever he deemed fit, and showing little to no regard for human life whatsoever. Naturally, he was fired from his job at the railroad, so Gage ended up wandering the earth, earning money any way he could. For a while, he hung out at Barnum's American Museum in New York City, basically making an exhibit of himself, standing there with a tamping iron like, hi, this went through my brain. Hi. He later had a...
I mean, this is probably why a lot of us have heard of Phineas Gage today. His story was certainly retold. Now, obviously, it changed his personality and his mind. He wasn't necessarily doing amazing, but considering he had a railroad spike through his brain, you know, that's operating pretty well in my opinion.
Stint as a farmhand in California and a stagecoach driver in Chile, which I don't know who let the guy with severe brain trauma and no depth perception drive a vehicle, but whatever. Over time, he actually became a lot more functional until finally, 10 years later, when his brain remembered, oh yeah, I shouldn't exist, leading to Gage having a bunch of seizures and dying at age 36. A similar story happened with one Ron Hunt in 2003. He was an American construction worker who was drilling a hole above his head when the ladder he was standing on decided to give way, leading to Hunt landing face first on a 1.5-inch auger drill bit. The drill went straight through his left eye and out the back of his skull. To give you a reference of what 1.5 inches of drill looks like, here's the actual x-ray that doctors took when Hunt arrived at the hospital. Miraculously, the drill ended up just kind of pushing his brain out of the way, leading to no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Matter of fact, Hunt was...
I mean, that's surviving even better. You know, not only has he gotten this drill bit through his head, but it hasn't actually fucked up his brain. You know, even Phineas Gage had to deal with some consequences due to parts of his brain being destroyed, but this is sort of an even more stellar recovery.
Perfectly lucid while the doctors tried to figure out the best way to take the thing out of his head. Initially they considered cutting it out, but that would have been too messy, so eventually they decided to literally just unscrew it from his head, like, alright, hold him still now. Oh, you fucking MILF. Lefty Lucy. Does that mean the top or the bottom? What? It's a rotating circle. And, okay, you hold on for 1 sec. Look, one way the top goes left, one way the bottom. So which? Clearly the one on top. Why? Tell me why. Why clearly? Same reason north is up on the map. It's just common practice. Alright, well, sorry for not subscribing to your...
This is why we would sometimes use clockwise or counterclockwise as an alternative, because it's more clear. But I think generally when you say lefty-loosey, people know what you mean.
Eurocentric propaganda, Dan, you soggy cunt. Anyway, what were we doing? If you think Hunt was just a little too lucky with his incident, don't worry. According to Snopes, he was self-employed and didn't have insurance, so while the accident didn't ruin his life, you can sleep easy knowing that hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical bills and rehabilitation costs probably did. Our next tale revolves around...
Classic America story. This man managed to survive a drill bit through his head. Frankly, you know, with luck like that, he should be done. You know what I mean? I mean, that is... I don't know what you want to call it, but that's quite something. Instead, he's heaped with mountains of medical debt. How about that?
Around Greg Rasmussen, a British-born animal conservationist who was studying wildlife in Zimbabwe. One day, he got reports of a highly endangered rhino being spotted in the area, so Greg took to the skies in a single-passenger plane to track the beast. Fate was looking down at Greg that day, and after a moment, it said, "No. Rhino must die." And a huge gust of wind came out of nowhere, sending Greg into a tailspin, crash landing right in the middle of the untamed African bush. When Greg woke up, he found that his legs looked like used up tubes of toothpaste, so he was essentially trapped right where he was. Arguably worse than that was the fact that Greg was dehydrated before he even took off, hoping to get water at his destination. And just when things looked like they couldn't get any worse, they got worse. A group of elephants showed up and started harassing and straight up stampeding at Greg. With no...
Sorry, this is a tale of survival? How the hell does this guy make it? His legs have been crushed. He's stuck in the middle of nowhere. He's already dehydrated. And some elephants have just shown up. I have no idea how this guy survives.
Other option, he starts banging on the wreckage as hard as he could. The elephants went, "Ha!" and decided to leave him alone. He was also approached by a pack of hyenas and actual lionesses on the hunt. But fortunately, animals are all morons, so the same trick worked on them too. Greg spent an entire day and night.
Shout out to Greg.
pinned under the wreckage, fighting off wildlife, severe dehydration, and extreme temperatures before finally being rescued the next morning. Incredibly, after over 100 operations, doctors managed to get Greggy's leggies up and running again.
Wow.
Although he was now 3 inches shorter, which is probably for the best, because now they can just stick the keys to the plane on top of the fridge so he never has another incident like this again. So more.
I mean, Greg's a short king now, but I think that's a price worth paying for, getting used to your damn legs back. I didn't think he was gonna, well, I knew from the title he was gonna survive. I didn't quite believe it, and in no way did I think he was gonna be able to use his legs again. So, becoming a short king, that's a good trade-off, I think.
Moral of the story, us humans are resilient creatures who will do anything in our power to survive. And just as Greg Rasmussen banged on his destroyed plane to ward off predators in Zimbabwe, you should bang on your keyboard right now to ward off predators online with Dashlane. In this day and age...
There we go. All right, we've got Salmonella's sponsor here. There we go. Yeah, I mean, humans can survive a hell of a lot, especially if you've got that, what I think is sort of natural drive to survive, right? Which probably most, if not all, living creatures have within them, especially us humans. Like I said at the beginning, that can lead us to survive a lot more than you'd think, but we can also be incredibly fragile. There's all this, and then and of course, this would not make such an entertaining video, but there's tales of someone who just slips one day, falls and breaks their neck and dies. And that's how fragile we humans can be. It can be a regular, everyday accident, and it can literally lead to your death. Or you can survive all the things we saw the people in this video surviving. There's quite a spectrum among human beings, quite a lot of variance. Anyway, with that, if you guys enjoyed this one, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like, subscribe, or check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. And with that, I hope you guys are having a good day today, and I'll see you all again next time. Goodbye.